we are back to do a video about the camera that we're filming on, although we have another. We didn't realise how lucky we were to get hold of the Sony A7III. There's a lot of people who are still don't have theirs, and we realised that we were taking it a bit for granted that we thankfully got ours very easily. We managed to shoot 2 weddings with them so far and a couple shoot, and just wanted to share our thoughts and opinions on it, really, if that's worth anything to anybody. It's not going to be very technical. I can't be bothered with all kind of different views and all that kind of stuff with the camera. We're just going to just speak about it. So
it's going to be a bit of a review.
If you want to see the camera, it's here, but you're not really going to see much beyond that. But
we are going to compare it to this big beast as well. So I think we've always shot with the 5D Mark III Canon, and now we're actually converting over to Sony, so we thought we'd explain the reasons why we are changing and maybe talk about some differences, some pros and cons and things like that.
We actually got this camera from the photography show, which was at the NEC in Birmingham. We thought it was going to be an absolute nightmare, but it turned out it was actually, I don't know if footfall is down or what, but
it was because of the snow, don't you remember?
Ah, snow. There's loads of stuff there, you know the deal, let's skip past that. Anyway, we managed to pick up 2 bodies and a lens. The lens is what we're using now, which is the Sony Zeiss FE35 1.4 ZA T-Star. It gets a bit complicated.
And we also picked up, is it a Sigma?
Yes.
MC11, which is an adapter to be able to use your Canon lenses. So whilst we're like the in-between stage, we thought it would be a good idea to have an adapter because then we can still use the same lenses.
We're in between at the moment, and it's a little bit painful because you're starting to get enthusiastic with the new camera, and all of a sudden you go to take a shot with the other one, and it's like you're having to really overly think about what you're doing. Our initial feelings about the Sony is very positive, but at the same time it is difficult switching over from a system that you're very used to for 5 years.
This trusty thing. We were on 5D Mark IIs when they first came out because we were like, oh, it's got video too, because that was like how many years ago? Probably
2009?
Nearly 10 years ago. And then we switched over to the Mark III, and then the Mark IV came out, and we're like, should we get a Mark IV, shouldn't we? But there wasn't enough difference to justify it for us personally and what we use it for. So we stuck with the Mark IIIs and just built on our lenses and things like that, and they've been brilliant. Yeah. But then the
Mark
Sony
III is probably the best camera you can get hold of. Selling for around about 1,000, probably a bit shy of, and it's pretty much the best bang for buck you can get if you're still on the come up.
There's a brilliant Facebook group, what's it, Buy, Sell, Trade, Photography Equipment UK, and it's been brilliant for buying and selling our stuff. Most of our stuff we sell on there.
So what do you like about it?
For me, it's the size, although I have had an issue on the first day, because for me, I don't know if I can show this, it cuts off into my thumb. So if you see that in comparison to that, this comes down a lot lower, whereas that comes up about there. So I'm actually having issues with getting swollen thumbs. So
you say you've experienced pain?
Yeah. So physically, because I've got really small hands.
And she's got the strength of a small child.
Oh.
I have bigger hands, so it sits higher up, but I naturally shoot with my little finger tucked.
With this camera, it just feels quite old school.
It is big, and it feels
big.
don't you think it feels hollow as well? Like it's
just
like,
so much space.
Yeah, it takes up a lot of space, and you feel like it could probably be. This feels like it's absolutely jam-packed.
It's the same kind of weight, but it's smaller, like more compact. Because we're working between the 2 at the moment, we've each got an A7III and we've each got a 5D Mark III. We're steering towards the Sony naturally, because you can see what you're shooting as you're shooting. Like, so change the settings, you can see it on the back of the camera and you can just take the picture. Whereas with this, you have to like look through it, you have to like change the settings, have a look at it and see if it's how you want it to be, then keep playing with it. Whereas for nighttime photography, like when we were playing with the like city lights in the background behind a couple, you literally just change the settings to how you want it to look and take the picture.
It reminds me of an old IT terminology, WYSIWYG, if any of you geeks are down with that. What you see is what you get.
Okay, I've never heard that before. We've also stopped, although you can look through the eyepiece of the Sony, we've found ourselves looking at the back of the camera instead. It just feels more natural. You can be in the moment a bit more. People don't feel like you're taking a picture so much. They just kind of, you're like talking to people and just like, you know, socialising a bit more. And whilst you're doing that, you can see what's going on around you and just take the picture. Whereas if you were physically taking a picture like this to your eye,
that's it.
It takes more time to get there, so you kind of could have missed the shot in that moment.
All you see now is a big camera, there's no connection there. Whereas this, you can literally just be in the moment. It's like maybe kind of showing a bit of emotion with people and stuff, connecting. These kind of things are big things with photography, building up trust and such. It's not just about taking a camera somewhere, it's about how you kind of deal with people in a way.
He always has a go at me because I chat too much during weddings.
Definitely.
But it's actually given me a chance to get more natural shots, a lot more than what it did with the 5D Mark III. It just seems to be a lot more natural. You're just kind of, you know, chit-chatting, taking pictures whilst you're chit-chatting. It just works quite nicely.
So you can be sort of in a moment and something quickly happens. You can literally just do that and you know that you're going to get it.
The 70 to 200 on the MC11 is quite slow, whereas all the other lenses shoot relatively well, although you just cannot beat Sony glass on Sony, can you?
Exactly. It does work, but it hunts a little bit too much. I would say that the Canon lens on the Canon body would probably be a bit more successful. So the camera didn't really turn out exactly how I expected. I thought that the actual screen was going to be touch operated throughout the whole thing, and it only actually relates to focusing. It's very handy for video people. We're not naturally video people, so haven't really been using the touch. The only way in which that you would find it beneficial, I think, is if you were set up for a specific moment, you could touch the screen to the area that you wanted and then have it set up. But I mean, sometimes when you're just kind of running and gunning as a photographer, it's easier just to, we use the center point focus and then recompose. I would actually love is if you could have front button focusing with the single, and then on the back button for that to be continuous. That would be absolutely amazing. That would be a game changer, to have two modes of focusing.
The menu is crazily complicated.
It's not crazy, it's just a bit things are in weird places, and it's not like you can just go to it. You've got to like hunt through, and I guess it's going to, once again, we're talking about 5D Mark IIIs that we're used to for 5 years.
Yeah.
And you know, we're only a month in with these guys. So.
What is cool with the Sonys, which I haven't actually done, he's done it for me, but you can actually edit the menus to suit what you want and your needs, so that works nicely though. Battery
life. This was one of the main things why this camera now became viable for weddings, because the battery life actually lasts longer than 2 hours. From what we've experienced so far, I mean, we can make it from, say if it's like a 9 AM start, I found needing to change batteries around about 2 PM, 3 PM, I don't know if that's
and we have space, usually 20% there.
Yeah. But we actually have 2 cameras as well, so that will be easing the load per camera.
Yeah.
But I think 3 batteries per camera for a wedding would probably just see a single camera through.
Oh, that's one thing to mention. Batteries have been really hard to get hold of because of this camera coming out, and then so many of the Sonys take the same batteries. There's been like a shortage and you can't find them anywhere. We were lucky to get 2 from London Camera Exchange just by chance. We're still waiting on some from Wex.
We ordered them 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, it was straight after we
still don't have the batteries.
Got them.
Okay, so the way that we worked around this for the early weddings, we managed to get hold of those batteries, and what we did is we bought a Hanel Pro Cube 2 charger. The Sony chargers, first of all, they're 80 quid, and that's just for a charger that charges 1 battery at a time. Yeah. It's a really simple thing. Why they didn't actually include a charger with this camera, this is one of the downfalls. What it has at the moment is just a cable that plugs directly into the camera, and then you charge in camera. I can see that, you know, for the amount that this camera was, it's £2,000. We can appreciate there's a lot of technology, and it is at a great price. Sony have really knocked it out of the park with this one.
Sony said this is a basic as well.
Basic model apparently,
basic
and this
model
is
for this type of camera, which is we're blown away by, to be honest.
We bought it was a Sony. It wasn't specifically a charger. I think it was called a multi-battery adapter, which actually fits onto the bottom of cameras, and it's able to hold 4 batteries in it, and you charge with this unit, but it's actually not a charging unit itself. It's some weird mod-on that allows you to have 4 batteries worth of charge running into your camera at the same time. So for people doing time lapses and extensive videoing, in which they don't want the actual power to cut. But it was a really cumbersome, horrible little device, and we sent it back sort of straight away.
We thought it would, because it says on it it can charge 4 batteries at a time. We were like, okay, this is brilliant, we can get a charger that charges all 4 and, you know, just leave it overnight or whatever. But it charges each battery like at a time, so it'll go through one, then it'll go through the second one, then the third.
So the focus on these cameras, they're like nothing you've ever seen. It works. That's one of the main things about any kind of camera. We've tried a few. This by far has the most exciting focusing system, very comprehensive, just kind of understands what's going on in the picture and is very quick, more so than the Canons. I bet you it's faster than the 5D Mark IV. I'd say don't hold me to that, but I'm pretty sure.
You're gonna have a lot of people abusing you in the comments.
Especially though, like this camera's £2,000 and the 5D Mark IV is 3,200 or whatever. This camera, it's kind of been teaching us how to shoot. Normally with the 5Ds, it would be to shoot through the eyepiece. Now we're shooting kind of in the majority back screen. It's just so easy. It makes sense.
I don't think I ever look through it, to be honest, through the eyepiece. It's
allowing versatility in your workflow. Certainly my hit rate for when there's the dance floor and the crowd of people and I'm just hovering over, you can
also flick it.
You can articulate the screen, so it just makes it a little bit easier to see. And as I say, my hit rate for everything has been up, guaranteed, plus 50%.
You can flick it either way, you can do that and that, so it's handy for if you want to do some really low shots, you can just flick it like that.
Why they didn't have the ability to be able to turn the screen round, so for instance while we're filming now we could see ourselves and make sure it was all alright, or even if it was actually still filming, then you know that would make life a lot easier. But as I say, it's a great price. I guess you can't have everything. Alongside the back screen shooting, there's the EVF, which is the electrical viewfinder. So normally when you look through traditional DSLRs, there is like a set of mirrors, one mirror in there. Most people know this, but as I say, just wanted to make sure. This is actually a mirror, it's not the sensor, and that bounces the image through the light. There's another mirror up here, and then you see what you see in the viewfinder. With the Sonys, that's not the case. It is literally just the sensor, and then the image that is captured by the sensor goes up to a little, there's just a tiny monitor in here instead, and there's no kind of like straight through the lens vision. It's been a bit strange using this because
I don't get to grips with
it. I mean, even though it makes actually more sense to use a little monitor rather than what you can just see as a reflection, it just kind of, you can't, the dynamic range on the monitor and actually on the picture is obviously less than what you're used to seeing, and as I say, it should make sense that this is easier, but it's a little bit of a mental education in actually using the electrical viewfinder. One thing as well is when you shoot on the back of the screen, the brightness of that is different to the brightness of the electrical viewfinder, and obviously the electrical viewfinder as well in itself is encased, so it's kind of like there's no light leakage, so it appears brighter as well. So there's it's going to take a little bit of familiarity with the camera itself to kind of just understand and judge. There's one way, I don't know if perhaps you guys probably would be familiar already, but you can put blinking highlights on the Canon 5Ds, and I'm sure Nikon, something that indicates when your picture is blown out. You can do the same with the Sonys. It's called zebras.
Yeah, it shows like a, I don't know if we can show it on here.
No, I don't think so, but it just shows
like a black and white line,
like a strip line where the areas are blown out, and it's just kind of, there is nothing wrong with a little bit of blown outness.
Blown outness, is that a word?
Well, better than blown offness. The Sony actually offered compressed versus non-compressed RAW files. I had to use uncompressed RAW purely because there is apparently tiny artifacts in the camera actually compressing it itself. If you have the memory space to do so, we shoot uncompressed just to be the absolute optimal quality that we can provide. We have enough memory space for it, at least at the moment.
Oh, the one thing to mention, this actually takes 2 SD cards, which is actually quite handy, whereas the Canons take, I don't know what the 5D Mark IV takes, but the 5D Mark III takes a CF card and an SD card, which is a little bit annoying because you've obviously got to get both, whereas this you can just buy the same thing multiple times.
Certainly, SD cards
really
are
handy. Also, most computers, laptops, if they've got like a slot in, it's usually SD. There's no CF card slot, so it's just literally you can just plug it into the back of your computer. And
one thing as well, these cameras have got a crazy like buffer on it. You can literally the burst rate, and we had to turn the actual sensitivity of the. You can have like a single shot drive where you take one shot and then you need to press the button again to actually take the shot. If you put it on like the continuous drive, you can literally hold the button down and it just fires off however many shots.
Too much.
Okay, so we had to actually have the drive mode on low because we were finding we were just taking 2 shots like with every kind of one shot that we wanted to take. So the low mode is. So I generally have it on medium because I'm getting a bit better at understanding it now, but. And then you can actually have it on like crazy high, which for some people they'll really enjoy this. So,
oh my god!
And it just keeps going. You can probably buy faster cards as well, but that's got buffered 30 shots there. So in moments of dancing and action, it's so much fun. It's really good.
This really comes to life in like on the dance floor and stuff. Like the colours are just really nice. The one thing I'd say in comparison to Canon, when Simon's been editing the pictures, you've had to be adding in a bit of contrast in comparison to Canon when you're working alongside.
Contrast and saturation. I don't know if it's how Adobe's RAW format is reading the actual files, but they, in comparison to the Canon files, they're coming out a bit flat. It's probably slightly more slanted towards green tints. So I've been pushing the red just a little bit more, but then I would actually squeeze in a little bit of saturation as well, just to bring the colours back to what I perceive to be normal. I think that the rendition of the RAW file is a bit colourless.
But at night time, the colours really pop. I think it's really nice at night, and it just picks up things really nicely. In comparison to the Canon, I definitely prefer shooting with that at night.
It's just, well, it actually works. You can focus. The Canon, you've really got to search for an edge or some kind of detail for it to actually snap into focus. This is much faster, so much faster.
I think we need to talk about the silent shooting, because it does have a fully silent shooting mode, should I say. The Canon, although you can have a silent mode, maybe we can compare them.
Okay, this is Canon silent shooting.
It's not very silent, is it?
Well,
I mean,
it is quiet, but you know, it's not silent. On this,
you can't hear it at all.
I'm just taking.
You genuinely can't hear it.
I'm taking photos now.
First time I started using the silent on this, I didn't even realise I was taking pictures. I was like, what's going on? Like, I couldn't hear anything. I was a bit confused. But literally, it's fully silent. There are issues that come with it. For example, the banding. That's one big problem.
How does this occur?
Oh, no, it's to do with LED lights, isn't it?
Okay, we're using an ice light to light us now, and there's no banding on that. So anything that's quality, you'll be able to see it. But the cheaper LED lights,
which a lot of venues have.
Yeah, loads. The technicalities of it, I will not bore you, but it's just a case of when you're shooting silent, how the sensor works. It has really harsh banding, like. It's quite thick, thick stripes, sort of like.
So how do you work around it? That's the most important thing.
You don't shoot on silent, number one, and then there's the E-curtain front shutter. You turn this off as well, and it reduces it. Now, if you want to reduce flicker, obviously you match it to the wattage of the electricity. The cheaper LEDs, they have a pattern that you can't even match, even if you were to be in manual. There's an anti-flicker mode on the A7IIIs themselves, but that still doesn't fully eliminate the problem. One thing to note as well with the silent shutter is that you will get the rolling shutter effect. So if you were to be filming, it would have that wavy, bendy. When it actually takes the shot, as far as I'm aware, the kind of signal flashes over the sensor in a direction which is not, you know, instant, like a uniform across the whole thing. So it's capturing a different part of the same moment a fraction of a second after. So then you would see, if you were to take pictures of like helicopter blades, for instance, it would look weird, like really like curved around and stuff. So
well, there's one other issue, which is marring, is it called? What? Moiré. I don't think there's such thing as marring because it's a French word.
The what?
But either way, I'm guessing French anyway.
Anyone who's familiar with moiré is it creates like a weird block of colour, which just looks really unpleasant. I guess it's just
looks like
when a
dirt
lot of lines are
on
intersecting and stuff. You used to get this on the Canons, but it actually, I don't know if through Raw kind of reinterpretation and such, it stopped happening. But certainly we haven't had any kind of worry issues with Canons for a good 3 years now.
Maybe it will be something that will be fixed in a firmware update or something.
Perhaps, but certainly there is really, in some points, extremely apparent with the Sonys. I mean, this can be edited out, but still, if it wasn't there, that would be a lot better than having to like deal with that.
It just looks like the grooms had spilt a bit of tea on his suit.
A bit
but you edited it out, and you can't even notice.
A bit of green and purple tea.
But even with these issues, like, it wouldn't stop us switching to Sony. We absolutely love them. They're brilliant cameras. It's just so exciting, and it just made us kind of fall back in love with taking pictures. You don't lose passion, you just start getting stuck in like a way of how you do stuff, whereas this has just like brought stuff to life again.
That's it.
Made us shoot more natural moments a lot more easily, which is what we want and what couples want a lot more now.
It's also got me on the landing at 2 AM taking low light shots of the cats and things like that, which
and stars through the window.
Yeah,
and
I've got to, like, you can literally handheld focus on the stars, which I couldn't do that with any 5D. You would have to kind of like manually focus it in. With this, you can point it up, providing there's stars there. You can focus actually on the stars and take a handheld shot. The ISO is fantastic, really great performance. I'm not going to say it completely annihilates anything else that's out there, but I would say it's definitely usable up to 16,000. You never know quite what's going to happen at a wedding. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
We're out in the car park that was like really dull lit. Like horrible kind of floodlights and stuff. Grabbed the groom and they were giving him bumps up in the air, and I managed to get an absolutely...
What is bumps? Because I never knew I've never heard that word before for it.
Okay, what would you call it?
Just throwing the groom up in the air.
Right, so bumps, right? So everyone grabs the groom and like everyone's got an arm and a leg and they just like toss him up into the air. I was able to get sharp shots at really in dark conditions. My ISO was maxed out at like 16,000, but it's a case of do you want a blurry image that doesn't mean nothing that you'll discard, or do you want a grainy image that's absolutely pin sharp? You know, I think I'd rather go with the grain. Some people are horrified at ISOs going above, you know, 6,000, but I don't know, I'm not going to limit myself to that. I'd rather keep my creativity open and have the ability. We shoot with the ISO set up on auto, so we set brackets from I think it's 100, but you can actually set it down to 50, and then you can set its maximum limit as well. Some people really like to manually manage the camera, but I think if you're going to spend good money on good technology, get the camera to work for yourself. I'm not a tech geek in any way whatsoever.
I'd say you're a lot more geeky than me though.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are levels to it, but I'm not going to go into a point where I'm going to obsess about manually using my camera. I want to set up my camera to be, as long as it's intelligent enough to handle the decisions.
Never fully auto though. Never fully auto.
No, I'm not going to put it on intelligent auto. I'm going to run it in a mode where there is an element of automation to my camera, such as the ISO, in which I don't want to think about that, because if you have the wrong ISO at the wrong moment, you're not going to get the right, you're going to miss the shot. Whereas if you have an auto ISO bracket set up, I decided to set the shutter speed to 1/250th of a second. I believe that's a decent shutter speed for kind of trying to keep things still without actually pushing the ISO too high. That's basically what we do.
What I absolutely love is we use a lot of kind of effects, like crystals and things, just kind of playing with the foreground and the, you know, whatever you call it.
Yeah, so if for instance,
we'll like hold.
You can use this.
Don't use my magic bottle of water. So I'll get like things and use.
So if you were to take a shot, you would just kind of introduce it slightly on the edge.
Just to kind of like anything, just to like colour or whatever, just to kind of add a little bit of an effect. And doing that through this screen is just like brilliant.
There's no guesswork.
Exactly. Also, like for example, the flare from the sun. If I want to add a bit of flare into a couple shoot or something, I can add that flare just without even. I know how it's going to look before I take the picture. Whereas when you're doing it on a Canon, you're having to guess how the flare is going to kind of come through the camera and take pictures, and it's just kind of trial and error to see what you've got.
I pretty much think that this is going to be our next evolution of us being better photographers. with the technology to complement it. I mean, people say it's not always solely about the camera, but if you have tools that help you achieve the things that that you want to try and achieve, and you've got like the inspiration and everything to do so, this just helps you do it a bit better. And if it's your business and you can afford it, then it makes sense to do it.
In summary of this whole video, I have to say that the A7 III is to Sony what the Canon 5D Mark II was to Canon. So I definitely think that it's something to look at if you're wanting to find something that excites you about photography again. Really, I definitely think it's worth looking into. The problem is it's pricey when it's two of us trying to switch our whole gear, and that's why things like, there's a brilliant Sony group that we've relied on heavily on Facebook for all of this, but I mean, just using things like this Sigma MC11 just to be able to, like, in the in-between process before switching fully to Sony, it's been really handy because we can still use the lenses that we want.
Yeah. Don't second guess the Sigma MC11. It's an amazing adapter. It does the job and everything works, 95%.
Yeah. Sony glass, you just really can't beat it, because Simon had the 35mm 1.4 Canon and obviously the Sony, and we would compared them, and the Sony's just that bit faster, that bit sharper, just ever such a slight touch, but it's obviously just we're talking like
1-2%, but
it just makes sense if you can to use that when you can. Before we wrap this up and completely finish, we were umming and ahhing between the A7 III and the A7R3 because the A7R came out before just the A7 III. There is a massive price difference. For us personally, as wedding photographers, we deal with a massive amount of files. The A7R3 looked amazing, it's just the file sizes are like double. So
the resolution on that is the resolution on these cameras are, I think it's 25 megapixel, and the A7R3 is 45. Ain't nobody got memory space for that. If you were thinking about an uncompressed raw of that, it would probably be coming out at 80 meg, which is like, and then times that by 8,000. That's like a lot of hard drives vanishing there.
So to summarise the very end of this video, we're saying goodbye to Canon, and we are over the next few months switching completely to Sony, including lenses and everything. We've even started getting rid of our flashes to suit Sony now.
Yeah,
so.
going to be switching to Godox flashes. Ain't got a clue what I'm doing with it yet. Just ordered it, presumably just going to use it in the same way, and it's all going to be hunky-dory.
We like to jump in at the deep end with things, don't we, darling? Bye, guys!